Hey everybody, welcome to Always Good News. My name is Mark Miller. So glad to have you joining us for another episode. We're going to have a great conversation tonight. And anybody watching from the U.S., happy Thanksgiving to you. Let us know where you're watching from. I always like to know what city, what province, what country, just in the comment box down below. Let us know. We always love to engage and know where our audience is tuning in from. And also, if you've got a question, you'll see the question box icon down below. Go ahead and throw some questions in there. If we get time at the end with our guest tonight, we'll look at some of those. Good to see Kelly and Gary and Mary. Montreal is watching, Halifax. Good to have all of you tonight. This is awesome. We're going to have a great conversation. Hey, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you click on the subscribe button. And you don't want to miss any of the upcoming content that's coming out on the YouTube channel as well. Well, in just a minute, I'm going to be joined by our guest tonight, Jason Ballard. Jason's one of the hosts of the Alpha Youth Series and a pastor at the Way Church in Vancouver, Canada. And he works with Alpha and the Canadian Church Leaders Network to build resources to serve and equip churches around the world. And Jason and his wife Rachel have 3 kids, and they live in Vancouver, British Columbia. And we are going to add Jason right now. Love you, Jess and Josiah. Hilda, good to see you. Hey, Dave, good to see you. And Jason Ballard is in the house.
How's it going, man? It's good to be with you.
Man, it's so good to have you with us. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, man, it's such an honor. Can you see rainy Vancouver back there? There it is.
We would be disappointed if it wasn't rainy.
It's misty. It's misty out.
Yeah, that's man. How do you survive that? Let's just jump into that.
Like a lot of vitamin D supplements. And right now, I have to say this, dude. First of all, really honored to be with you. But in the background, so I'm in our church office right now. And downstairs, they're recording all of our kids' content for Christmas. So you might hear Christmas carols in the background. Like, if you can hear it, let me know. We can all just sing along. It's awesome.
Let's do it.
And so it's hard not to be happy talking with you, hearing Christmas carols downstairs. And it's just so good.
And seeing the mist. Well, it's better than snow, let's be honest. Unless you love snow.
My kids would like
Jason,
snow a bit better.
So listen, you're usually the one asking the questions on the Canadian Church Leaders Network podcast, but tonight, man, you are in the hot seat. Are you ready for this?
Mark, I just trust you so much. And I know you're going to be kind. And honestly, you know what? Can I just say this? Billy Graham, and who's the namesake of the organization you guys are working for, is such a hero for me. Absolutely. Like such a hero. Because of his commitment to loving people so much that he just put himself out there, and the work that you guys continue to do, it's really so special and such an honor. And so thanks for including me. It means a lot. Oh
man, we're excited to have you, and I agree. You know, I'm one of the things I'm blown away by, just, you know, if we're going to talk about Billy Graham straight off the top here, is like the crowds and the people he reached in his day. Yeah. Notwithstanding the fact that there was no social media, you know, there was no digital reach whereby people knew, and yet Times Square, you know, hundreds of thousands of people gathering. It's just phenomenal, the reach and the impact that one man had.
And the humility of a leader of that kind of influence. I mean, I think that for followers of Jesus or people who aren't followers of Jesus, we're looking for men and women who have done life well and stayed tender and kind and convicted. And he represents that. I think we're really desperate for role models like that. And so I think that's why people grieved when Billy Graham passed. Not because we were surprised that people in old age pass away. It's because he represented something so profound to so many. And for me as a young leader, it represented what it looks like to be faithful and consistent. Not perfect, but faithful and consistent. And we need more leaders like that. And so I still hold him as like one of those role models for myself.
Yeah, so awesome, Jason. Welcome. Hey, Chris, good to see you. Vital Point Church is logging on, which is awesome. So many people just jumping on. Rodney from Rodney Trinidad from Australia. So good to have you. Listen, Jason, before we jump into all the questions and the good stuff, we do a little this or that, which is going to be fun, and people are going to get to know a little bit about you. Here we go. Vancouver Canucks or BC Lions?
Oh, Vancouver Canucks. But anyone that's like following me, like from my thread that know me, is like neither. They're gonna be like, Jason doesn't do sports. He's a hack. So that's the honest truth.
He just knows that they're in town, but all right, fair enough. Hoodie or Crewneck?
Ooh.
What's the
I
sweater
mean,
for choice, man?
wow, what a question. I didn't realize it was gonna be so intense, man. Um, I wasn't prepared for that. That didn't show up in the brief. Right now I'm rocking a Crewneck, so I'll just double down on that.
Okay, all right, let's go with Crewneck. Sushi or steak?
Steak all day.
Yeah, man, 100%. All right, windows down or AC on blast?
Windows down.
Okay. Now, are you a Bible highlighter or a Bible underliner?
Underline and scribbler. But I'll say this, that's a really important piece to know me is like every time I approach any document, there's a new system. So like whatever system I had last time, like stars or margin notes or circle, it's never the same. And so it's like it's like an eclectic mix with no sort of what is it called? Like a legend on a map? Like there's no legend to decipher my annotations at all.
Random facts with Jason Ballard. Love it. Apple Music or Spotify?
I'm on Apple Music, although I think I should change to Spotify, but it's just, they've got me locked into just the integrated plan.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, here's probably the hardest one, and people are going to judge you harshly on this one, no doubt.
Okay, here we go.
Z or Z?
Ooh, here's the thing. I say Z on occasions, but I've been reprimanded before by whenever I call it's Generation Gen Z, I say Gen Z because I read all the American data on it, and I've been properly scolded by an elderly woman after speaking because I called it Z.
Such a random fact, but I love it, man. But it's amazing what people will pick up on.
Yeah.
Oh, Jason, so good to have you. Listen, man, a lot of people know you from being a host of the Youth Alpha video series, and you speak all over Canada. You've done some incredible conferences and events, but sometimes people have a perception of kind of knowing you and from those angles. But before we dive into our question, I always love to hear your story. Old school will say your testimony, how you became a follower of Jesus and what that relationship has meant in your walk in your life.
Yeah, thank you for asking. It's really special to talk about it because my relationship with Jesus informs so much of my life. It's so important and precious to me, and with my wife Rach, like how we raise our family and how we even try to make sense of what it means to live in the city. But I think my walk with Jesus became very serious around 13 years old, and I remember my mom and dad are followers of Jesus, and I remember, I don't know if it was 11 or 12 years old, I really struggled. I felt really like a lot of preteens. Preteens are hard years. Those are hard years for me. And I felt insecure. I felt like misunderstood. I definitely had like, I think like, yeah, I felt like had really depressive moments and really dark thoughts and I lashed out in tons of different ways. And one time I was fighting just like with my parents, and like my parents probably weren't doing any fighting, but I was doing a lot of fighting myself. And I think my dad read a Bible verse or handed me a Bible, and I threw it away. Like I took the Bible and I tossed it. And for me, that was because it was so irrelevant. Like, how could this help me in any way, shape, or form? And like, I didn't have the language then, but now I'd probably, in retrospect, have put it, what would a story about someone who lived 2,000 years, a book written on the other side of the world, hundreds and thousands of years ago, have anything to do with my life today?
Right.
And then my life radically changed. I was in an environment where I heard a speaker talking about the message of Jesus. And honestly, I don't remember what he said, but I felt both loved by God and convicted by God. And it's a weird thing to say because it was an awareness of two realities. One is that God is big and real. And there's something like terrifying about that. Yeah. Like, and I know that's a weird word, but at the same time feeling held and loved by him and invited, like that tension. And I surrendered in some way, and it changed my life. Like, it really changed my whole experience of life on planet Earth. It didn't erase all of my challenges. It didn't in fact, there's new challenges that come by being a follower of Jesus, but it changed so much about how I perceive myself and others. It changed my relationship with my parents. It changed my relationship with my peers at school. And I was really healed of a lot of those dark thoughts. And then since then, I've been trying to live into it. And I think that for me, even today, just driving in to work, I was just talking to the Lord and just asking him again to become more real in my life. And even again, saying, Lord, I want to follow you. Where else would I go? And so while there's that defining moment in my life, I feel like there's this like this constant invitation to re-engage my faith, recommit my faith. And so I feel like I've just been on a real massive journey for the last 15 plus years, getting to know him and what it means to actually follow Jesus.
Wow, that's a great answer. I love the reference there to that story when they were just leaving Jesus, and then he said, "You guys going to leave too?" And they're like, "Where else are we going to go? You hold the words of life."
Mark,
And
that's my story, man.
Yeah,
That's my story.
As a follower of Jesus, it just the recognition that things are tough sometimes, and yes, there's a lot coming. Where else are we going to? There is no plan B. There is no other option when you've tasted living water.
Yeah, and you know what? I think I am like, I don't know about other pastors, but I'm like a lead pastor of a church, and I think I like feel so weird about that. I have so much doubt, man. I struggle. Like, is this? I'm like, is this like? It's just so wild, you know. Even Christmas, that God incarnated and became a man. Like, this story is like crazy, especially when you're saturated by a worldview in culture that would say, you know, that any miraculous story can't be true. There's this kind of and that what you might call like a naturalistic worldview. It definitely doesn't answer the biggest questions about life on planet Earth. So it doesn't hold up. It doesn't make sense of beauty. It doesn't make sense of love and affection and our existential longings and these transcendent realities. It doesn't make sense of those things. But sometimes you're so steeped in it that you reflect back on your faith and you go, man, like, this is crazy. And so I feel like I'm the most like, you know, as a pastor, filled with doubt, but I find myself again and again going through this journey of saying, okay, Lord, I know I'm so imperfect as I followed you. And I know that I doubt, but where else would I go? Like, in you, I found the words of life. And that's, it's not a dogmatic position,
right?
You know, because I'm constantly engaged with other people, but man, that are challenging me and helping me think and sitting and learning. So it's not a dogmatic position, but it's a deep resolve that in Christ I have found the answers that satisfy my intellectual questions and my existential longings. And I found a secure hope. And what I've seen again and again and again, the number one thing that keeps me tethered to Jesus is seeing what happens when people around me come to know him.
Yeah. Man,
like when other people submit their lives to Jesus, and it's always different. Like, there's no formula for it.
Yeah.
You see people filled with hope and love and joy. And it's like, and that's why I think, I don't know if people who are watching are followers of Jesus or not, but if you're a follower of Jesus, if you haven't, like, that's why I'm so committed to being part of things like Alpha. When you see people explore faith, ask questions, see God work on their heart and their lives change, like it does something in your own life. And that's why I honor you, man. The work that you're doing with Billy Graham and your team is like this deep commitment. And when you see it up close, I mean, it changes your life.
Yeah, and we do, similar to your experience with Alpha, we see it up close. You know, in some of the, you know, the stadium events that we do can sometimes be big and massive and sometimes intimidating, but to see people have a genuine transformational encounter with the person of Jesus, it just reminds me sometimes that for me, who as I've walked as a follower of Jesus, sometimes familiarity, you know, gets a little tough, and you need to be around, like you said, with seeing people come to Christ. And the power that's in that. Another scripture that just I was reminded of as you were talking there that I often just really resonate with is, I believe, help me with my unbelief. And being okay with, you know, there's some unbelief here. I'm trying to figure, but I do believe. And that's where the faith, and you know, you mentioned Alpha, Jason. You're part of the team here in Canada, such a powerful ministry. One thing I've noticed just on a real surface level in terms of the power of Alpha is churches everywhere. Like, the reach of Alpha is just God. I mean, just to see that. But Alpha is really, I mean, it's a ministry that's all about inviting people into a conversation about Jesus. And I want you to talk to us about your experience with Alpha, but specifically why inviting is so important and why are conversations so important when it comes to evangelism, reaching people with the good news of the gospel. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Sure. It's always trying to like get at what's the essence of Alpha. I think the essence of it is there's room at the table for others. Like, we got room. And before the pandemic, Alpha was typically done in person over a meal. And the idea was anyone's invited, especially if you wouldn't typically go to church. This is for you. And no questions offside. And Alpha is not for people who are insecure in their faith. It's for people that say, hey, I would love to actually sit across the table for someone who believes differently and thinks differently than me and have real conversations. And it's about community. It's about inviting people into community. And then it's inviting people to explore Jesus for themselves. And in the Gospels, there's this cool rhythm that you see where, Jesus says, hey, come follow me. And then individuals go to others like, hey, like, come along with me and follow, come and see for yourself, like come and see for yourself. I feel like that's what Alpha is, just like, hey, come and join the conversation and come and see for yourself, come explore for yourself. And Alpha essentially is like a conversation. There's short films that we've made that go through the base of the Christian faith, and then people just chat it out in groups. And for a long time, my primary involvement was helping youth ministries do Alpha for Youth. We got 2 resources, Alpha for Youth and Alpha for All Ages. But as a church right now, we're hosting Alphas online, and literally, like, we invited the city, like we invited our friends and people that we've met, but then also we did Facebook ads and invited people come and do Alpha on Zoom. And we just had the most incredible conversations with people from different faith backgrounds, different experiences with faith. Some people have tried it and felt burnt by it and walked away. Other people have never thought about before, agnostics, atheists, across the board. And we just had the most amazing conversations about Jesus, about life and the human experience. And then we've seen them join community, like join small groups and get plugged into the life of our church. And one of the most important things about Alpha, I think one of the reasons why so many different organizations and churches have been able to use it is because it really emphasizes on the main things we share in common as followers of Jesus. And so anyone can use it, Catholic, Protestant, across the board. And I think that's important, that as people explore faith, there's a lot of secondary things that people can be distracted by. But like it's an opportunity to invite people to wrestle with the core message of Jesus, who he is, why, what his life was about, what he taught, and why he died, and the implications of those realities in our life. And I think every human being should explore that, at least have a chance to chat it out in groups. And that's the posture for it. So it's a lot of fun, and it's just been cool to see how different people have used it in different communities all over the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. And actually, I was talking with my daughter, 16-year-old today, Maria, you're watching, and she loved the videos you guys did. So
that's so fun.
The ministry. Another cool story here in Halifax. We had a guest speaker on Sunday, and Pastor Joanna Goodine, and she was talking about leading Alpha during COVID, during the lockdown, and young parents were joining for the first time because there was nowhere to go. They couldn't go out and socialize as normal. The kids were in bed. They jump onto these calls and these videos and on Zoom, and next thing you know, they're coming to church and they're following.
Listen,
Jesus.
People need community, man, and they need
100%.
community, and to be able to say, like, there's people willing to connect and chat, and then if people are looking for an answer on the questions of, like, hope and meaning and purpose right now. And I just think the pandemic has I don't think we know just how much the pandemic's impacted people. We know a bit of the economic fallout, but we also know that we're not going to know for a year or 2 or 10 the real economic effects. I think the same will be true socially and emotionally and spiritually. I think that it's affected family, like this Christmas. Think about how families will be affected. As a church, we are partnering with an organization called Holway House here in Vancouver, and they're just providing stockings and meals for seniors in senior care centers. And one of the realities is there are seniors who don't have family. They're living in isolation, and COVID has meant that they're increasingly isolated. And the emotional and physical and spiritual effects that we don't know just how it's affected people. And so I think the opportunity to even use, as imperfect as the online experience can feel, to be able to reach out to somebody and say, hey, do you want to jump in, connect, have a meaningful conversation? I think it's really important and profound. And I think that, I'm really sad thinking about how, I don't think we know just how this affects people. And I think part of, the hope, even as in our local church doing Alpha, is that we can invite people into important conversations where they can experience community and some hope.
Yeah, I agree. And, one thing that, the Billy Graham Association in our evangelism training, we constantly focus on is the fact that we don't have to have all the answers. And I think sometimes people begin to shut down as followers of Jesus when they're confronted with, I might not know how to answer. And I've often said in our evangelism training, some of the best answers you can give is, I'm not entirely sure. Let's go find out together. Let's journey on this together and take away the pretense that, hey, as a follower of Jesus, I know all the answers. I have this figured out, because honestly, we don't. So we're going to find this together. and those conversations are powerful. Now, Jason, you referenced a couple times there the church that you pastor, the Way Church in Vancouver, which recently launched in a pandemic. Hello.
Yeah.
Tell us what God's doing. Tell us some stories, because this Always Good News initiative that we started, we want to hear God at work across Canada to encourage people, let them know that the church is being built and God's building His church. And we'd love to hear about the Way Church in Vancouver. What's God doing?
Yeah. Thanks for asking, man. I thought for a long time, hey, Marv, thanks for saying hello. I'm just seeing in the chat there. Thanks for saying hello. We were dreaming about planting for a long time. In fact, I think about a decade ago, I started whispering to friends, I think we're going to plant a church in Vancouver in 2020.
Wow.
And the reason why we said 2020 was a cool round number, super far away. But we used to say that, but it was just a cool number far away. And then it's so interesting how, looking back, we see how God's hand was at work over a decade, positioning, building a team. And so my wife and I moved to Vancouver just over a year ago, and a number of other families did. We began to connect with other families here. We began to say, what would it look like to join what God's already doing in the city? Here's what's really important for anyone thinking about church planning or trying to make sense of church planning. We're not starting anything new. Like, the Way Church is not innovative or anything. Like, the church has been growing for 2,000 years in the most crazy times, like in the midst of world wars and civil wars and other pandemics. Like, the church has survived and even thrived when they've realized the unique calling they have to care for those in those times. But we're joining. There's so many great organizations and churches already in the city. So we're just joining in on the work that they're already doing and feel like, we were called to be part of it. And so we planned September 27th, 2020. And this was all way before March. In fact, we were running the Alpha course in person. And it was this was back in January, end of January, we started it. And this is long before the launch, but and then boom, the pandemic hit and lockdown. And I remember how sad we felt calling all these guests. Like, we're having such a good time eating pizza and food together in this old church we rented. And it was a really meaningful time. And we had to tell them that it wasn't going to happen.
Wow.
And then a couple of weeks later, we heard from our friends in Malaysia that they had taken Alpha online. And they said it's working really, really well. So we thought, well, we have nothing to lose. Let's give it a try. And so we called all the people that were coming and said, hey, would you ever jump on Zoom? And so we're on Zoom doing our first Alpha, and we saw it really work. And it's like, that really impacted me, because I began to realize that actually the implications of the restrictions don't have to threaten us. They can create challenges, but listen, we're not the only sector of society. The church isn't the only. Some people have this narrative, and I don't want to be political, but narrative of like, how dare they do this? And I just feel so much for the people making this and how difficult this decisions are.
Absolutely.
And there's so many industries. I think about the arts here in Vancouver, like the restrictions around gathering affect so much of the arts community and other meaningful organizations. And so we are affected by it in dramatic ways, but it didn't have to stop us from going forward in our mission, which was to include people, to love people, to point people to Jesus, to make meaningful community, support people in need. So we'd be able to go after it. So, but that experience with Alpha was like a symbol. So we just went all in, man. We're going to do this. So we started meeting with our launch team every Sunday morning on Zoom, and our launch team grew from like 40 to about 150 people. And it's like they're plugged in to want to serve. And then we launched online services, and we've launched 10 small groups. And here's what's crazy. Give me one story. Like, there's so many stories, but we are seeing people who we've never met before. So for example, one person comes to mind who somebody posted about the Way Church on their Instagram, and then somebody who followed them, they didn't have a relationship. Sometimes that happens on Instagram. They followed because they're interested in one aspect of their life or the sports they're playing. And so following them, and they come and they reach out and they say they want to know more, attend a service online, and during the music, for some reason, have an experience. And I think if I recall the story right, essentially she had I'm just distracted because Peter says that's a sweet mustache. I'm just covering.
Settle down, Peter.
I just put a Post-it in front of it, so I'm not distracted anymore. That was a tactic. I'll show you. I came prepared. I literally said, let me just say this. Okay. I said to one of the team, I said, Peter Yoon's gonna come on and troll me. And I said, give me a Post-it for when he comes on. So that goes out to you. That goes out to you. So predictable. Okay, so check it out. She goes, I really hope I'm getting this story right. I know I'm not trying to use any hyperbole. I want to honor the story. She had filled out some sort of census form and said, I'm an atheist, okay? And then found herself on this online service checking it out. And then during the music, that we're singing songs about God, and people from our church were leading music online, such an imperfect format. And she had this experience where she goes, oh, I am not an atheist. I believe God is real. Didn't believe Jesus was real. Didn't believe, but like, I'm not an atheist. Like, my worldview is not one without God. Like, she had a moment, and then sincerely began just to try to connect. And so when it was appropriate, she's part of a bubble of people watching church at home and was asking questions. We were able to give her a Bible. She read the book of John for the first time, and joined Alpha, went all the way through Alpha, and now she's in a small group. And we've seen that happen again and again and again. People meaningfully connect with community. And in this case, she's made a really meaningful decision to follow Jesus. But other people haven't necessarily made that decision, but they're plugging in and exploring. And so what we found and we can't wait to be in person. Like, bro, I cannot wait to gather with all these new friends and to invite people to come. But I definitely feel like there's unique opportunities in this season to still impact people's lives and invite people to community. And the season's made it all the more important to do that.
Yeah, well, it's so good. And, we do want to recognize this has been a tough season on pastors and leaders and planning, and then having those plans halted, and then switching and having to pivot, and all those words we don't even want to use anymore.
I'm tired of the word pivot. It's not,
I know.
I say it every day. I don't think I go through one conversation without saying pivot. Can you hear it in the background? Jingle bells, by the way. Can you hear it?
We can hear something. I can't tell what song it is, but
they're singing Christmas carols downstairs. They're recording some content for our kids' online stuff. Did you hear? Hey, they're singing jingle bells. Anyway.
Hey, listen, just talking about churches, we actually have a question from David Baker. David, are you still online? Hopefully you're still here.
I know David is
Baker. An awesome young leader in London, Ontario. And David's asking, what do you think is going to happen with the church in Canada through COVID? Well, I think you just addressed it in terms of, we can have excuses, or we can just make it work and keep plugging away and keep following Jesus and trying stuff and not being afraid. If it fails, hey man,
I think
keep going.
I'm really optimistic. I think that people have to wrestle in their unique context with what it looks like to make sense of the season. So it's going to look different in each church, but I'm just really optimistic because I feel like this season has an ability for us to remember what it is we're doing and why we do it. And for some reason, we can get really distracted by different things, get distracted by our buildings. I love church buildings, especially when they're beautiful. And I love that they provide a place for us to gather. I think it's an important social need, important fabric of city blocks. So I'm for buildings. I'm not against them, but we can think it's about the building, or even Sunday gatherings. I'm for Sunday gatherings. I think it's an important part of our formative rhythms as followers of Jesus to gather together. But I think that we can make them the point. And I just feel like this is one of many things that could help remind us what the real point is and what we're really about. And I think it's just helpful for me to remember this is the most difficult thing for many of our lives. So I don't want to downplay just how intense this season is. But in the history of the church, and one of the reasons why I'm a follower of Jesus is we have 2,000 years of history to look at. And the first couple hundred years of the church, there was such radical opposition. Think about it. There was the first 100 years of the church, the government was against it. The primary religious organizations of the day were against it. And the people were scattered. There was no money, no resources. And the reason why the church grew in the first 100 years, Rodney Stark talks about this, it was a lot of reasons. But one of the reasons was they met the needs of the world around them in radical ways. And history books talk about how they stood out because they even cared for those who weren't their own. And so I think the way that the church has thrived throughout human history against great opposition and challenges is by getting back to their main mission, which is that we're here for other people. And a season like this can help us remind us of the great need around us and kind of get in touch with that kind of some of that coreness about who we are as followers of Jesus.
That's a great answer and so true. Jason, thank you for planning a church in Vancouver.
We're having so much fun, man. We're having so much fun.
Yeah, but you know what? I just want to honor you for that because, you're doing a good work with Alpha, and you get lots of opportunities as a young leader in Canada to be doing some great things. And let's be honest, you could get comfortable in that and just kind of roll with what's happening, but yet you stepped out and you're trying some stuff, and I love it. And just hearing that story about that young lady is so refreshing. We'll get ready to clue up in a couple minutes here.
I could talk to you all night, man.
It's so good. I love it. You having fun?
Yeah, I like it. I like hanging out. I'm a little bit thrown off by by Peter Yoon's comment. It's not like, I don't even know why. I think it's just a shadow, dude. It's like I shaved this more, like I shaved evenly. There's no mustache. I don't know why he brought that up.
No Movember.
I'm so distracted by it. He's probably not even here. He just dropped the line and then left like a little mime
we'll block
just to distract us.
We're so glad everybody's here. Jason, it has been a crazy year. We talked about that.
Yeah.
Maybe some final comments in terms of encouragement for people that are, maybe struggling. Maybe there's some discouragement, some anxiety. I know last year the most Googled, I guess, YouVersion Bible verse was "Be anxious for nothing." I can imagine it would be any different this year.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of tough stuff this year that people are experiencing. Any encouraging words for everybody tonight that's watching as we conclude?
Yeah. I just, I really appreciate the question. And the only reason I hesitate is because I'm just so aware that, I know that right now there's X number of people watching, but like there'll be people watching different times, and I just don't know their stories. And so, I know that for some people to say it's hard, it's like, this is hard. And so I want to be really sensitive. And for others, it's like, you know what? The season hasn't changed much for me. I just see that there's that whole spectrum.
True.
I think my encouragement would be, I would say that if you could see Jesus clearly right now, you would see that he's not afraid, but he's not indifferent. Like, I'm, if I'm in a new place, like, if, Rach and I with our 3 little kids are staying at like someone's house when we travel or something like that. And if the kids are ever like walking around, they feel lost, or on the beach when we first moved here, like one of our kids would be on the beach and they might lose sight of us, they'd panic. And because they don't have a context. As soon as they get eye contact with me, they're fine. Yeah. Like, it's like as soon as they could see me, they're fine. And I think that it's really hard in the busyness of life to get a clear picture of Jesus. And there's a lot of distortions, people using Jesus and misrepresenting him. But I think through the word, through the church, through the Bible, through the church, and through like a sincere like prayer to God, like he hears our prayers, you can see him clearly. And if you could see his face and see the countenance of his face, you'd see that he's not afraid, but he's also not indifferent. He sees you, he loves you, he knows you and what this season has meant for you and the challenges of it. And he's not afraid. And I know in the Christmas story, one of the things that comes up the most is do not be afraid. And that's a strange command, because it's like, do not be afraid. It's like, well, what am I supposed to do? Like, how, like, it's like, if I said, hey, Mark, don't be afraid, you'd be like, dude, what could it change? And I thought about it, and who says do not be afraid matters. So like, if Hudson, my son, is lost at the beach and some stranger says, don't be afraid, not helpful. But if I say, buddy, it's going to be okay, don't be afraid, my voice of love and authority is life changing. I feel like God would say, do not be afraid. I see you. I've not forgotten about you. And that's important for anyone who maybe wouldn't call himself a follower of Jesus, or for someone who's been following Jesus for a long time. Like, how long have you been following Jesus for, Mark?
My whole life, man.
Yeah. And so for me, over, oh, dude, I'm so old, like 20 years now. I still need to hear that. You know, when you say things like, yeah, for the last 10 years, I've been saying for the last 10 years for 10 years. For 10 years. It's 20 years. I got to upgrade it to 2 decades now.
Yeah.
But I made I really started following Jesus when I was 13. It was a really meaningful, specific decision. And it's changed my life. And but I still need to hear him say, do not be afraid, Jay. I see you. I love you. I'm with you. And often I don't feel really deserving of that. Yeah. But he would still say it. And that's what I hope people would hear, is that, the whole message of Christmas, and we're going to begin to see tinsel and songs everywhere, is that God showed up in the midst of it all. He when it comes to matters of love, you do it in person, and he sent his son because he loved the world so much. And it wasn't an impersonal act, it was a deeply personal act. And when you see just how personal his love and sacrifice for us is, it changes our whole experience of life on planet Earth.
That's very good. And just, the whole Christmas reference, his very name, Emmanuel, God with us.
Yeah, right? It's amazing.
It's transformational. And And it sounds cliche again if you're familiar, and the familiarity piece comes into play. And I think what you said is so powerful. The basics, the reminder of who it is we put our faith in, and he is not afraid. And man, so good. Listen, this has been so refreshing. You're right, man. We could talk forever. This is great. And so many people chatting and just engaging with us. That's so good. I want to encourage you, if you're watching tonight, we do have a great resource, a great website called goingfarther.net. If you've got questions you want to ask, there's some ways you can explore the basics of Christianity. You can register for some free discipleship courses there, and there's a church locator if you're looking for, a great church to connect with. But if you're in Vancouver, the Way Church, Jason Ballard and his team are, incredible. Jason, how can people connect with you and find out more about the Way Church?
Yeah, we have a website and all that stuff. We're active on Instagram. And I think, if you're in Vancouver and you're not connected meaningfully, we'd love to connect with you. There are tons of great churches in the city and organizations. And on Alpha, anywhere in the world you're watching, I think there's probably an Alpha on, I guess because it's online, you can go anywhere. But even, when the pandemic's all said and done, if you want to find one in person, you go to alpha.org, or in Canada, alphacanada.org, and you can find an Alpha near you. And thanks for having me, dude. This is such an honor. I really enjoyed chatting with you, and honored to have any connection to an organization like Billy Graham, who just really loves people enough to do audacious things like you guys do.
Well, it's been a blessing to have you, and we appreciate you, what you're doing there in Vancouver. Hey, everybody watching, thanks for tuning in again this week for always good news. And just be encouraged. Don't be afraid. God is good. God is faithful. He's true. And you can place your trust in him, even in these times that are shaking. So, Jason, thanks so much, man. Have
My
a good
pleasure.
rest of your night, and
Thanks,
we'll
dude.
be in touch. Take care.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.